The first clue hit me when I accidentally saw a message on her phone while she was in the shower. "I hope you don't have to come up with another excuse tonight, sweetheart." My heart pounded so hard I thought I'd collapse right there on the couch, the NFL game blaring in the background, her shampoo's scent lingering in the living room. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe properly for a moment. I swear I prayed I'd misread it, that I was just being paranoid, that it was nothing. But it wasn't a group chat, an ad, or a mistake. It was a text from someone saved as T with a heart emoji. I knew damn well Sarah didn't have any friends whose names started with T. It was a guy, probably younger than me, some jerk stealing my wife right under my nose, while I thought our only problem was not having time for weeknight dinners. I sat there staring at her phone like it was a live grenade. I could have dug deeper, checked her messages, photos, Snapchat, Instagram, emails, but I didn't. I closed my eyes, placed the phone exactly where she'd left it, and waited. A cold fury settled in, like that gut punch feeling when you know something awful is coming and you're powerless to stop it. When Sarah stepped out of the shower, towel drying her hair, she flashed me that smile, the one that used to melt me. Now it felt like a cheap mask, part of a play I didn't want to watch anymore. "What are you doing just sitting there, Mike?" she asked, giving me a quick glance as she slipped into her cozy cotton pajamas, the ones she said she only wore when she wanted to chill. "Nothing, babe. Thinking about the game," I lied, forcing a smile that probably looked as fake as it felt. "Did we win or lose?" she asked, acting like she cared about football, like her mind wasn't on something or someone else. "Tied," I said curtly. She nodded, distracted, like the conversation was over. She climbed into bed, turned off her bedside lamp, and faced away from me, just like every night for months. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring into the dark, listening to her steady, fake breathing. She wasn't asleep. Neither was I. Rage burned inside me, but doubt gnawed harder. What if it was just flirting? What if nothing physical had happened? I hated myself for making excuses for her, for not wanting to face the truth that the woman I'd shared a decade with, dreams, failures, everything, might be lying to my face every day. I lay down beside her, not touching, and spent the longest night of my life plotting how to uncover the truth without her suspecting. The following Thursday, I said I was grabbing drinks with work buddies, but parked 2 blocks from our apartment, engine off, heart racing. Sarah had casually mentioned she'd be late due to a team meeting at her marketing firm. I didn't buy it anymore. For over 2 hours, I watched neighbors, delivery guys, dog walkers, and moms with strollers pass by. No Sarah. I checked the car's clock for the 100th time. 10:15 p.m., that meeting should have been long over. I was done doubting myself. I had to act. I pulled out my phone and opened the tracking app I'd secretly installed on hers a few days ago. Guilt twisted my stomach, but it felt like my only shot at the truth. The app pinned her location to a trendy downtown street packed with bars and patios, not her office. Without thinking, I started the car and sped over, gripping the wheel like it could hold back the anger boiling inside. I parked, walked the crowded sidewalk, and spotted her instantly. She was at an outdoor cafe, sitting across from a guy I didn't know, dark hair, neat beard, flashing a smug smile that made my skin crawl. Sarah wore that red dress she saved for special occasions and the blouse I'd given her for our last anniversary. She leaned toward him, laughing, touching his hand like it was second nature, like the intimacy we'd built over years now belonged to him. I didn't confront them. I stood frozen, hidden between 2 cars, watching like a fool as she laughed, played with her hair, and acted like I didn't exist. I saw him pay the bill, offer his arm, and her accept without hesitation. I followed them from a distance, staying out of sight as they strolled down cobblestone streets like lovesick teenagers. "Wanna come up to my place for a bit?" I overheard him say as they paused by an apartment building. "I don't know," she replied, using that playful tone she used when she wanted to seem coy. "Come on, just for a little," he pressed. She hesitated for a split second before nodding with a shy smile. Then they kissed, right there on the street, a long, intimate kiss, the kind she'd stopped giving me months ago, blaming work stress or exhaustion. I turned and walked back to my car, numb, blind to the city around me. I just needed to get away before I did something I'd regret. In the car, I slammed the door shut, rested my head on the steering wheel, and tried to stop my hands from shaking. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad, just a thick, heavy rage and a burning need to make her pay for every second of this betrayal. At home, I sat on the couch, cracked open a beer I didn't drink, and grabbed an old notebook. I wrote down everything I'd seen, every word, every gesture, like I needed to etch it into stone so she couldn't gaslight me with lies later. I sat in silence, planning, waiting for the moment we'd face off, knowing I wouldn't look away this time. That night, I didn't just uncover her affair. I saw the real Sarah. When I heard the key in the lock, I'd made my decision. Sarah walked in, tossed her keys in the entryway bowl like always, kicked off her heels with an exaggerated sigh, and headed to the living room with that fake normalcy that turned my stomach. She saw me on the couch, arms crossed, staring. For a second, her smile faltered, her eyes flickering like she sensed danger before her brain caught up. She didn't speak right away, just studied me, trying to gauge if her act was still holding. "Still up?" she asked, her voice light like she was dodging a fight. "Where were you?" I asked, keeping my tone low but sharp, no room for vague answers. "I told you, meeting at the firm," she said too quickly, looking away as she shrugged off her jacket and hung it on a chair. "At the firm," I repeated, letting the silence weigh on her, forcing her to feel the lie. "Yeah, it ran late. You know how these things go," she added, turning her back to me, heading for the kitchen like distance could shield her. I stood slowly and followed. She grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, pretending everything was fine, like she hadn't just been kissing another man. "Whose tea?" I asked from the doorway. The bottle nearly slipped from her hands. Her shoulders tensed, her lips tightened, and she gripped the bottle to hide the tremor in her fingers. She turned slowly, forcing a confused smile that looked more like a grimace. "Tea," she said, dragging out the word like she was buying time to spin a story. "The one who calls you sweetheart," I said quietly, not letting her off the hook. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, looking away, moving back to the living room like she could outrun my words. I stayed close. "Want me to remind you, or should I show you the photos?" I said, watching her shrink into herself like a cornered animal. She sat on the couch, rubbed her forehead, and sighed so heavily I thought she might cry. But she didn't. When she looked up, her eyes held something worse than fear, resignation. "Mike, it's not what you think," she started, but I cut her off. "You're really gonna try to sell me that crap?" I snapped, feeling the anger surge like a live wire. "Just listen," she pleaded, stepping toward me like she could erase it all with a touch. I stepped back. "Talk," I said. She hesitated, searching for the right words, like a kid cramming for a test she didn't study for. "It's just someone from work. We connected," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Connected," I repeated, laughing bitterly. "That's what you call it now?" "Mike, nothing happened," she said quickly, stepping closer. "Just texts, a couple of coffees after work, that's it. I was confused, stressed. We've been off for months, you and me." Her words collapsed when she saw my face, blank, like she was a stranger. "And the kissing in the street?" I asked, letting the question land like a brick. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She knew I knew. We both did. It wasn't stress or confusion. It was betrayal, plain and ugly. "It was a mistake," she whispered finally. "It didn't mean anything." "A mistake is forgetting to buy milk," I shot back coldly. She paled, took a few deep breaths, and then the tears came, not raw, honest ones, but the messy, frantic kind of someone caught, not sorry. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't know how to handle it. It got out of control." "How long?" I asked, ignoring her tears. "A few months," she admitted, covering her face like she could hide from the shame. "A few months is enough to destroy everything?" I asked, not expecting an answer. She sank into the couch, defeated, unable to meet my eyes. Standing there, I felt something inside me break, not just anger or humiliation, but the brutal certainty that there was nothing left to save. That night, I crashed on the couch, though sleep isn't the right word. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to Sarah cry in the next room, wondering how hate and grief could coexist so fiercely in one body. At 6 a.m., before dawn, I got up, showered quietly, and left without a word or a glance back. I didn't know exactly what I'd do. But I knew I couldn't just sit there while she acted like nothing had happened after torching everything we'd built. First stop, the diner where I usually grabbed breakfast before work. Over a scalding coffee, I started making moves. I texted our landlord for a copy of the lease, the bank for a statement of our joint accounts, and my cousin's lawyer friend for an urgent meeting. This wasn't just about divorce. It was about making Sarah face every second she'd made me feel like a fool. I went home at noon, knowing she'd be at work. In our bedroom, I yanked her clothes from the closet, every shirt, every dress, every pair of designer shoes, and stuffed them into black trash bags, not caring if they wrinkled or tore. Then her makeup, her books, her keepsakes, anything that was hers, I didn't want to see again. In under an hour, her presence in our home was reduced to a pile of bags in the hallway. I called her mom. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Diane," I said, faking politeness. "Sorry to bother you, but Sarah's gonna need a place to stay tonight. She can pick up her stuff whenever." A long, awkward silence followed. "What happened, Mike?" she asked, her voice thin. "Ask her," I said, hanging up. Then I sat at the dining table, laptop open, changing passwords, Netflix, Amazon, Spotify, even the apartment complex's resident portal. I canceled her credit card, cut her access to our checking account, and booked a motel room for the next few nights until I could find a new place. I wasn't giving her the satisfaction of keeping our home while I scrambled for a place to land. One last thing. I printed screenshots of her texts with T, the tracker data placing her downtown that night, and photos of them kissing. I organized them neatly, slipped them into a brown envelope, and left it on the dining table with a note. "So you don't need more excuses." At 6:30 p.m., I heard the door. Sarah shuffled in, looking like she sensed the storm waiting. "Mike," she called from the entry. "Here," I said, sitting on the couch. When she saw me, the bags, the envelope, her face fell apart like a house of cards in a windstorm. She approached the envelope, hands shaking, and as she read, her face grew paler. "Mike," she whispered. "Please, don't call me that," I said sharply. "You lost that right." She clutched the envelope to her chest like it could shield her. "What are you gonna do?" she asked, voice breaking. "Nothing," I said, shrugging. "It's already done. You've got until tonight to get your stuff out. Your mom knows you're going to her place." She tried to protest, searching my eyes for mercy. She found none. "I talked to a lawyer this morning," I continued. "We start the process tomorrow. I don't want anything of yours, I just want you gone." Sarah slumped into a chair, defeated. "I didn't want it to end like this," she murmured. "You didn't have to fix anything," I said, standing. "You just had to not screw it up." I grabbed my small box of essentials and headed for the door. Before leaving, I turned one last time. "Don't call me, don't text me, don't look for me. As far as I'm concerned, you're dead." I walked out, slamming the door, the same door we used to cross laughing, planning trips, dreaming of a future. Now it was just a wall between me and the worst betrayal of my life. The next 3 days were chaos, but necessary chaos. I moved into the motel with just the basics, spent hours with the lawyer sorting out asset division, and pushed for the divorce to move fast. I didn't see Sarah, didn't text her. But Friday afternoon, she messaged, asking for one last talk. I hesitated, not because I wanted to hear her out, but because part of me needed to close the book with more than a slammed door. I agreed, but on my terms. A public place, no private scenes, no tears to sway me. We met at a downtown coffee shop at 5 p.m. sharp. Sarah was already there, sitting by the window, staring at her untouched coffee. She stood nervously when I walked in, unsure whether to wave or stay still. I sat across from her, silent. She opened her mouth a few times before speaking. "Thanks for coming," she said softly. I didn't respond, just waited. "I know I have no right to ask for anything," she began, voice low. "But I need you to know I didn't plan this. I didn't wake up one day wanting to cheat." "But you did," I said, stating the fact. "Yeah," she admitted, looking down. "I did, and I don't know how to fix it. It was a mistake, a string of mistakes. It started with dumb texts, then coffees, then you know." "I know exactly how it ended," I said, my voice flat. She swallowed hard, gripping her mug. "I'm not trying to make excuses. I just want you to understand it wasn't because I didn't love you or because you weren't enough." I felt empty and looked for a distraction in the worst place. You could have left, I said. If you felt that empty, you could have packed your bags and walked out before humiliating me. I know, she whispered. I'm sorry. The coffee shop buzzed with people laughing, living oblivious to our wreckage. What do you want from me, Sarah? I asked finally. She looked up, eyes red but dry. Nothing, she said. I'm not asking you to take me back or forgive me. I just wanted to face you, to tell you I'm sorry, that I screwed up and ruined the best thing I ever had. I didn't know what to say. There was no satisfaction in her brokenness, no joy in her apologies, just a vast sadness, like everything that ever mattered was buried under rubble. What's your plan now? I asked, more out of habit than care. She shrugged. Find a place to live, get a job transfer, start over, she said without conviction. Good luck, I said, not because I meant it, but because there was no point in twisting the knife. She nodded, sipped her cold coffee, and stayed quiet like she wanted to stretch the moment. Are you staying in the city? She asked softly. Don't know, I said. Right now, I just want this to be over. She closed her eyes like her own words hurt. If you ever need anything, a small favor, a dumb question, I'm here, she said, her voice heavy with genuine regret. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. That's not gonna happen, I replied. We sat there, staring like strangers who'd never cross paths again. I stood, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the door. As I passed, she whispered, I'm sorry, so faint I barely heard it. I didn't answer. I stepped outside, breathed deep, and knew that, though it still hurt, though it'd take months to rebuild, I'd taken the first step toward a life where I wouldn't lie awake wondering if the person beside me was betraying me. For weeks after that final talk, life felt like navigating a foreign land. It wasn't sadness or anger driving my days, just a functional emptiness, pushing me to get up, work, eat, sleep, like a pre-programmed checklist to avoid thinking too much. I focused on wrapping up the legal stuff fast. The divorce moved smoothly, and aside from a few unavoidable emails about paperwork, Sarah vanished from my life. No pleas for reconciliation, no last-minute drama, just silence, like we both knew there was nothing left to salvage. I moved into a small apartment in a quieter neighborhood, simpler than our old place but mine. No memories clinging to the walls, no furniture whispering about a past I wanted to bury. Starting over in my late 30s wasn't easy, but at least I could build something that was just mine. I switched up my routine, joined a local gym, ate at new spots where no one knew me, wandered unfamiliar streets. I wanted nothing to tie me to the life I'd had with Sarah. One Saturday, post-workout, I sat at a cafe, sipping a beer, watching people pass by with no real plans. For the first time in ages, that tightness in my chest was gone, that need to figure out what went wrong. I hadn't forgotten, but I'd accepted that sometimes there are no answers to fix what others break. You just let go. Days later, my mom texted, inviting me for dinner. We hadn't talked much. I didn't know how to explain without sounding pathetic. But that night, over her famous meatloaf, I spilled everything, no sugarcoating. I didn't curse Sarah or dramatize it, just laid out the facts. Mom listened quietly, her face serious in a way I rarely saw. Not everything bad is bad, she said after a pause. Sometimes you need to be uprooted to grow differently. I didn't reply. She was right, even if I wasn't ready to admit it. That night, back at my place, I started a list in a worn notebook, things I wanted to do for me. Road trip to the coast. Learn to cook properly, not just live off sandwiches. Pick up the guitar lessons I ditched when Sarah and I moved in together. Small things, but mine. As months passed, bits of news about Sarah trickled in through mutual friends. She'd moved to another part of town, switched jobs. I didn't care for details. She was part of a chapter I'd closed and wasn't reopening. One fall afternoon, leaving the gym, I ran into her on a busy street. She was alone, holding a grocery bag. Our eyes met, and for a moment, neither of us knew what to do. She gave a weak smile, raised her hand in a shy wave. I nodded and kept walking. No words, no need. Our story was done long before the divorce papers were signed. Over time, I realized you don't always get the closure you want, you just keep moving. I didn't need her apologies or her regrets. They weren't my business anymore. Today, sitting in my small apartment where I've rebuilt my life from scratch, I think back and feel no hate, no sadness, just relief. I survived what I thought would break me. I learned that trusting someone is a risk, but it's also a kind of courage. And though I got burned, I'm still betting on myself. I don't know if I'll fall in love again or want to share my life with someone new. For the first time in forever, I'm not in a rush. I'm not filling a void. I'm living, and after everything, that's enough.